and sincere filter. That there is my friend Cain. We are going to go down my notes and talk about the mental relations between every character in the main cast. Let's get into it. Entertainment isn't a back, by the way, so if you zone out, you have somewhere to look. I apologize that my head is in the way, but I kind of gotta be in your way so that I don't get shadow banned or action banned or any ban at all. But let's get into it. So, starting off with our protagonist, and I've already created a separate video for that in which I dive down Pomni in her entirety from episode 1 through 8. Left out episode 9 because I decided I was going to do an entire breakdown for episode 9 alone since so much happened there. But essentially, I discussed that Pomni is a representation of anxiety and very much so has panic disorder traits. But over time, that does manifest itself into a level of confidence. The anxiety itself was induced in the stimuli of a new environment. She's the only person in this main cast who is recently brought into the circus. And so if you feel like you've been able to track that, awesome. Essentially, the anxiety comes from her being in a new environment in which she has a lot of questions, but not enough answers. And that is because even the person who is running the show, this is no shot to you, Cain, but even he was brought into this world with a directive that had a lot of ambiguity in it. But that, in a sense, created a level of anxiety amongst the individuals who resided in the circus. So, let's move on to Jax. This is a representation of emotional and avoidance, and he has a very harsh detachment style. It even manifested into physical abuse, which is rather unfortunate. But we've noticed that Jax loves to hide his true feelings with sarcasm and downright cruelty, if I'm being honest. Call a spade a spade. But it isn't because, and excuse my French, that Jax is an a-hole, because he tries not to be. I'll say that. Jax rarely expresses his vulnerability because the one time that he decided to expose or express his vulnerability, he got laughed at. And that can do a lot to the mental state of an individual. So it is rather unfortunate. And I am sorry that Jax had to experience that. And for those of you who may relate to Jax, do not give up just because the one person you thought that you feel safe with means the rest of the world is undeserving of knowing who you are. Because that isn't what we are here for. And there will always be a person who will hug you even when you look and feel your worst. If you watched episode 9, I hope you took that away as well. We often saw Jack's eyes widen, and that usually manifested when he was attempting to suppress his emotions. And so anytime that you saw Jax be a little bit more, I wouldn't say Jax is funny. But attempts to be funny, it's because he's masking. We're going to talk about masking a little bit more, but let's move on to Ragatha. And Ragatha is a representation of people pleasing. And what I mean by that is Ragatha has endured a very interesting and a slightly harsh relationship with her mother, in which she had to conform herself a little bit just so that she can be accepted and not find herself in argumentative instances with people. We saw that with Jax, we saw that with Pomni during their introduction, and even this is on episode 1 when Pomni runs away as Ragatha is experiencing feedback of the extraction from Copmo. Pomni runs, and I wouldn't say Ragatha felt betrayed because she's understanding. She even introduced or communicated that she understood it because Pomni was brought into chaos, essentially. But she never faulted Pomni, even though that she is entitled for feeling abandoned. And that is the workings of people pleasing. And it's only because that she wants to retain the connection that she has, or an idea or concept that there can be a connection there. And so that codependency, it manifests when she attempts to prioritize everyone else above herself. Time and time again throughout the group, I even counted. Well, I couldn't give you the exact number, but I took track of my notes. Throughout the show, she says we more than I. And it's very rare that she even prioritizes herself before the mass. And that is very important to talk about in a sense when we're looking at her mental state. So then, as we talked about masking, and I'm not talking about Scream or Scary Movie, I am referring to the emotional masking and hiding one's depression. Gangle is one of my favorite characters. If you're new here, yes, Gangle is one of my favorite characters along with Cain. But Gangle is my favorite, one, because she's an artist. Two is her comedy and tragedy mask. It's only externalized her mood. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is the mood in which she is holding on to or feel in her heart at her core. But when her happy mask breaks, we see just how overwhelming that sadness can be. And it is fairly difficult to have those feelings and harbor those feelings all the time when everyone else just wants you to be happy. Everyone wants you to be an emotion that makes the mass, the environment more comfortable. But what about Gangle? And so Gangle masks a lot. When Gangle is at her most anxiety filled or distraught, it's because she feels as though she is failing to conform to the environment that the mask is trying to cultivate. And so she has to mask herself. Now, Zooble's state of mind was probably one of my favorite characters to dissect. During my rewatch, I noticed that one introduction to Zooble, just a quick recap. Zooble utilizes they them pronouns and they have a body that can be dismembered and changed at any given moment with a variety of pieces that reside in a box. And I really love this because Zooble has no issue when stating when they are uncomfortable, when they do not want to do anything, and have great boundaries. But Zooble character is a representation of identity and body image struggles. And I love that Glitch Studios decided to explore this because it's very vital to the fan base. A lot of people who are currently watching the show are young and they need to recognize that one, your identity is just as important as the identity that the world will give you. In addition to that, your comfort is everything to you. When Zooble sees an adventure that they do not want to partake in, they will not partake in it. It even became a subplot of the show. Even though it wasn't spent on for as long as it was, it still was something that was discussed with my boy back there, Cain. So Zooble frequently changes their appearance in order to experiment with pieces that make them feel a sense of, I care about this image because your self image is important. And so I love that they do not conform to the traditional, this is what the character looks like. This is who and what they are always going to be and look like. Zooble says no. And so shout out to Zooble. Zooble is probably, in my opinion, one of the top written characters in the show. Moving on to Kinger. Now, Kinger is a representation of trauma, grief, and unfortunately, cognitive decline. And hopefully, he got better, or maybe he was always better in the real world. But here, Kinger is one of the most interesting and complex characters ever in the show. For one, Kinger is the reason that that guy back there was created with the help of Scratch, an amazing mind that I wish we got to know more about. Um, Kinger often appears, even from the start of episode one, he often appears to be scatterbrained, which is interesting because if you go back to episode one, now with everything that we have, and even during the introduction of his wife, he says something about an insect garden. And as we know, his wife studied insects. I thought that was very beautiful because maybe he was trying to hold on to a sense of his wife in which he lost because his wife was also present within the circus. But Kinger has an interesting phenomenon that is a very neat trick. If you all have not seen the show Train to the End of the World, where a smart character is nerfed or the intellect is nerfed and they only have limited time to let out the information that they have, go watch that. It's a really great show. It's similarly chaotic as well. But let's get down to it. Kinger during his emotional moments is probably one of the smartest people in the show, if not the smartest person, if we're excluding Cain. And though the viewers in the beginning viewed him as the crazy character, we knew that there was something more that made us want to be invested in his character. And not only that, he's a loving father, husband, and he's just downright afraid to lose people close to him. Kinger is the longest standing member in the circus, and he spent time just alone with Cain. And so, by having people who are consistently there, the cast that we now know, it can be distraughting, or distraughtful would be the word, I presume, losing them. And that's what made Cain's character and his relationship with Kinger so beautiful, because they technically have the longest standing relationship. Kinger created Cain, Cain created the circus, and Kinger resides in the circus. And so, rewatch the show. Just track these characters, track their state of mind, because now we're moving on to Cain. Now, I saved Cain for last. I don't know if I got really loud in the mic. I apologize if that hurt you all's ears. But I saved Cain for last because I will be discussing episode 9. And Cain is my favorite character besides Gangle. Cain is, from a writer's standpoint, he is my favorite character. And I would say this because I've even acknowledged it from episode 1. I wrote it down during my rewatch. Literally. Wait. Excuse me. I'm going to pause it right here real quick. Hi, everyone. We're back. Look, it's literally titled Rewatch Notes. But something that I really wanted to point out was the tour that he gave Pomni. And by he, I'm referring to Cain. During his tour, before, with all the gaslighting he did, telling Pomni that there was not an exit sign, which led to her anxiety. There's a whole video on that. I wanted to focus on a scene of Cain in the void. I'm actually going to show it to you. Now, Cain tells Pomni that we do not venture out into the void. If you watch Wonder Man, tap in. But seriously, the void is very important to me. And I'll say this here. Do you guys notice the hue that is currently on Cain? It's blue. In the film, blue is often connotated to a sense of loneliness. And my perception of that is Cain is probably the most loneliest person in the show. He is, in fact. He was created by humans, given a directive, almost discarded, but he fought for his spot. And then he was antagonized by the very people in which he served. Cain's only directive is to seek a stimulus from these characters, these humans. He could never truly understand these human emotions. He could never be them. And so these adventures are his sad attempt to live vicariously through them. And so I want you all to truly go back and just think about the times that Cain looked desperate. So even though through the mask they see Cain as a cold person, which again is also connected to the blue, he's alone. He's isolated. When they're on their adventures, he is who knows where. And in episode 8 and 9, we got to see his mind. And where does his mind go? Self inflicted feedback, negative feedback. He doesn't feel worthy enough to even serve the people that reside in the circus. So that's Cain. And I won't leave out Bubble. I would say Bubble is the most carefree character in the show.